Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to Real Reviews Podcast, the show that's late. So, what's up, everybody? Hopefully, you guys can hear me. Let me get a 1 in the chat if you guys can hear me, or just say something just to let me know that the audio is working from my end at least. Let me see. I'll wait for a couple of people to respond and we'll go from there. I was having some technical difficulties earlier. Can you guys hear me? All right, they can hear me. All right, let's bring in everybody. Let's get this party started. Okay, so obviously we had technical difficulties. Why you gotta be racist, Nate and put Juan? Oh man. Anyway, so while I try to fix Nate's camera because he's on top of everybody because he's cooler. So everybody, as you can tell, we had some technical difficulties. Thank you for being patient. Today we are on the film Spirited Away. Spirited Away tells the story of Chihiro Ogino, a 10-year-old girl who, while moving to a new neighborhood, enters the world of kami, which is also known as spirits of Japanese Shinto folklore. After her parents are turned into pigs by witch Yubaba, Chihiro takes a job working in Yubaba's bathhouse to find a way to free herself and her parents and return to the human world. So anyway, that's what the film kind of starts off as. Before I get started, let's say what's up to some of the patient people in the chat. Revelator, he said, here and ready for a good night. I want to hear your thoughts on this. This is something you've been chatting about, saying that you've watched it, that you know about it. I want to hear your thoughts. Shout out to Honey Bun. She says, I am pumped. Mr. Phil Fox, the impatient, obviously. Mr. Phil Fox says, I'm waiting. What's up, Carm? Carm, I would like to thank you for telling people to be patient and that we were starting shortly. Thank you for kind of taking the lead on that. Of course, Mr. Phil Fox being a nerd, SOC best hurry. It's probably having bandwidth issues. No, I was not having bandwidth issues. It was actually sound issues for some reason or another. I was not able to hear my team, so I got that fixed. Thank goodness. Let's see what else. All right. With that said, let's start with everybody's general thoughts on the film. Nate, I want to hear your thoughts first, man. What did you think about Spirited Away, and did you think it was really worth the watch?
Well, I thought it was worth the watch. I really enjoyed it. I even finished the film, but
Wow.
but no, it was a really enjoyable film. I haven't seen it since I think early 2000s, probably around the time it came to the US. But there's a lot of thoughts I had about it going through it, and so I'm excited to talk about it. But yes, I did enjoy it.
Cool. Michelle, I want to hear your thoughts in general about the film. What did you think of it?
With parents like those who need enemies.
Did you like it at all? Did you like the film?
Yes, I actually like the film.
All right, cool. BK, what were your thoughts about the film?
Those are my thoughts, SOC. Like I don't.
That's fine. BK, what were your general thoughts about the film, man?
I did not like this film at all, man. At all. I mean, there's still some things you could draw from it, obviously, but I didn't. Yeah, it was a tough one.
It was a tough one to get through.
Yeah, it really was. So.
All right, good. So we'll get some varied thoughts. For me, I thought it was an interesting film. I thought the film was more interesting when I started looking online to see a little bit of the history, the little bit of where some of the pagan gods and deities came from. Um, I actually enjoyed the film. I feel like I have to watch it again after I watched it, just because the character No Face kind of stood out for me. I started thinking about things a little more. I was trying to rush home after work and watch the film one more time, but I didn't get home on time. I had to spend some time with the wife eating dinner, and I just couldn't get to the film. But okay, let's get into the dirty, dirty dozen. Okay, so let's talk about one of the most popular characters, as at least from what I'm seeing online, is No Face. Um, Nate, any thoughts on No Face? What did you think of him as a character, and some things that maybe stood out to you in the film about that character?
Yeah, No Face. He's definitely a very interesting character, especially since you don't really know in the beginning when you see him, you don't really know what he's about, and you can't really see any expression in his face. So I think it's kind of interesting from that perspective as you're following this character and wondering what he's going to do if he has any kind of nefarious purpose, I guess. Um, but I yeah, I was actually I looked him up online too because I thought I remember hearing something about him it um that was not apparent, but but I couldn't find anything to that supposedly he was made up according to something I found. But what was interesting was that what I didn't realize at the time was that he was um that when he started like when he consumed the frog, he became a frog.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't, and so that's one part I didn't that didn't occur to me, that he was becoming the things that he was consuming, and becoming maybe a little bit more corrupt, I guess, and becoming like the things. Yeah, like he became like the frog. I guess he became like the other two people he was eating, and um, it was interesting to see uh, what he became when he was it. Yeah, I think. Well, yeah. So how far do we want to get into this?
Go for it, man. You might
It
as well.
it Yeah, okay. I think it was interesting to see clearly he had some kind of desire. He was searching for something, and he wanted something from Chihiro that she wasn't giving him because she was distracted. She was uh, worried about trying to help Haku, and he was um, initially when I first watched the movie, because I was watching it a couple times, I was like thinking, oh, this is a guy that was, well, this is kind of bad, but it was, well, he was trying to. It seems like he was trying to satisfy his appetites and throw. So he was throwing money in this place to satisfy something, but he wasn't really getting satisfied. And so that I thought that was interesting. And so just like somebody who was giving into their carnal desires, um, and probably feeling some sort of pleasure from it. It just made him want more. And so I thought that was interesting to kind of see that reflected in his character. But even with all the food he was getting and all the attention he was getting and all the money he was throwing to get all that, he still wasn't satisfied. And it was like there was something that he wanted from Chihiro, which I'm still not quite sure what it was, if it was her approval, her love, or what. But something that he wanted from her that I guess he thought was going to be more satisfying. And it I thought the what happened with him when she gave him the medicine, um and he started purging all of that stuff, it sort of made me think like she was, in my mind. So in my mind, throughout the whole movie, Chihiro felt kind of like she was in many ways a reflection of what I think Christians are supposed to be, as salt and light.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of what her effect was on No Face, I felt like in a way she was salt for him, in that he corrupted himself with all his appetites, becoming this monster. and she was able to help him by giving him the medicine, and he purged all that, kind of almost like it was purging his sin. And um when he was and then he ended up following her to, what is it, Zeniba's
Hmm.
house, and finding something that's more meaningful and, I guess, satisfying, and a purpose. And I was like, okay, this is kind of interesting. Like, she's not, I mean, she's just trying to do whatever she can to do, just following her for her heart, mostly focusing on Haku. But then, she sees No Face there, kind of needing something as well. So she's, even while trying to help Haku, she's still helping him,
Hmm.
because she just sees somebody in need, and she's able to help him. And I just thought that it was kind of interesting just to see um, the effect, the positive effect that she was having, not just on No Face, but some of the other characters we'll probably get into later. But it was. I just felt like, oh, Chihiro really, she seemed to me. I mean, she was a young girl, doesn't she's kind of immature, but she had this heart at the same time, and it was like, okay, this to me almost seems like this is a good reflection of what a positive effect a believer has when they're doing what they know is right, what is at least natural to them, even if not perfectly, and the positive effect that she was having on everyone around her. Um, and I think we could see that particularly in No Face. But yeah, I've been talking a long time, so I'll probably let other
No,
people.
no, you're fine.
But
Well, it's really cool because No Face actually plays this role of kind of like a reflection for me when I'm watching it, a reflection of society. And he kind of feeds their own desires. Like for example, in the bathhouse scene, which was a very popular scene in the film, at least from what I'm hearing from other people who have been talking about, is this idea that once he discovered that the people wanted gold, he was able to produce gold and then feed on their own lusts and desires. As long as he was giving them gold, they had no problem uh, serving him, bringing him things, so forth and so on. Once it started to consume the people, then they became afraid. Then they started panicking, and they had this fear. And I think it played a lot on the way of how sin is. At first, sin can seem to serve you until it consumes you. And I think No Face was a good reflection of that, which is interesting because I think to some degree, No Face was kind of the one who reflected what sin was, but also what judgment was on the people's own sin, or I should say, the creatures that were living in there and the people that were living in their own sin. It was like he was God's judgment on them for their greed, and it was interesting. It's almost like you enter into this unseen realm, right? No, no, no pun intended. You enter into this unseen realm and you realize that these gods and deities are just as lustful as human beings in the world are now. And it kind of reflects to me like the Greco Roman gods, where they were just as wicked and evil as human beings. They weren't any different. At least that's what I saw from No Face. And I thought he was an interesting character. BK, your thoughts on any characters in particular, any scenes you want to talk about?
I mean, the No Face thing. He just shows up and they don't give you any context, which is actually kind of cool, right? Because now your brain is trying to figure out why this character is here,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes that alone is entertaining, right? And then it slowly unfolds what part he plays in the film.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I guess my favorite scene was, and the whole movie's insane. First of all, it's just insane. It's absolutely insane. It's
what
bonkers. I
what what
got
made what made it insane to you? Like, what was it?
well, Michelle kind of alluded to it. The parents, bro. That made no sense to me. Now, listen, I understand this is high fantasy, but to start with the incompetence of these parents, like you're driving to your new place, you do know where you're going because you pass by the new school where your daughter's going, but then something happens and you just forget about going home, and you find this deserted place, and for some reason you get out your car, let's go see where it is. And your daughter is traumatized as it is because she don't even want to go to this new place. Now she's not even at this new place. She's at this other place that has she don't know why she's here. And then, all of a sudden there's this deserted playground from the 90s, and it's completely deserted. There's no one there except for this one booth that actually has food. No servants, there's no customers, there's nobody here at all. The parents said, "Oh well, there's food, let's eat. It doesn't matter if there's no one here. This is not strange. Let's all eat." And I'm like, "What?" And then when they eat, they become pigs, and of course, which makes the daughter even more traumatized. And she has to go down this basement and work for this dude with 8 arms. They try to figure out. Oh my goodness, it's insane,
Yeah.
insane. Like it was so hard for me to get over the how terrible these parents were. My goodness.
Tell me how you really feel, BK, about the film. Tell me how you.
Oh man, it was like I gotta be honest, and this is a super hot take. I think this is the first anime that I did not like.
Wow.
I pretty much liked everything I've ever seen in anime. This is the first one I could straight up say I did not like at all.
I get that. Like when I watched the film, there were elements about the film that I liked. But I think what's more interesting than the film are the people's takes on it, the historical backgrounds, and references to the deities. I can see where somebody would watch this film and be like, "Okay, what did I just watch?" Because it does go in a lot of different directions, and none of them seem to link at times. So I get that. I get why you didn't like the film. For me, I enjoyed aspects of the film. I wouldn't say it's my favorite anime of all time by no means. We got some heat in the chat for you. But he's
Uh
BK. I'm BX.
Now BK know why he BX.
uh-huh.
oh Lord.
I knew he was from the Bronx. Anyway, Michelle, are there any aspects of the film that you found interesting that you can pull from to discuss?
I agree. Her parents were trash. And then there's a scene where they're crossing the rocks where a lake was supposed to be, and he's like struggling, and her parents is like, "Come on, hurry up! Like your kid is struggling." And then the mom's like, "Don't grab onto me, I might fall." Ma'am, y'all shouldn't even be going down this tunnel. And like the dad driving, like he done lost his ever loving mind. Like the opening of this movie is just like it's bad on your nerves. And I'm just like, who? Yes, I was glad when her parents turned pigs because it fit them because I was sick of them
Oh wow.
already. Um, so I will say when it comes to No Face, like we see that he was isolated when he first got there because your Baba was like, "Why is he in here? Who invited him?" So he was already isolated, and then we see like how Nate brought it out like how he changed with whoever he consumed, and I thought of when we don't have any stability and we can be tossed to and fro by every wind of doctrine, like he
Mm.
was literally tossed every like whatever he was consuming it because he doesn't have identity, hence no face. He doesn't have identity, he doesn't have community, and he suffered from isolation. So he's trying to become whatever it is to have some sense of identity. So he's becoming all these different things to develop an identity for himself because he doesn't really have one until he goes to Geneva and then he gets an identity. And so it also during this time too, Japan was having like a war with capitalism. So it speaks
Right.
a lot of that too. Like the gold represents like capitalism, how everybody's consuming upon
Hmm.
their own lust and they just want more and more and more. And so they're going to keep producing and doing whatever to try to like satisfy consumers in order to have more without thinking about the consequences of their consumerism and mass consumerism and doing whatever to try to be to get and have more of something than you had before.
Hmm.
So like that made me I have a political science degree, so sometimes in economics degree, so sometimes when I see that kind of stuff, I'll be like, "Ooh," especially with countries I know like they really ain't with it the way that we are, but whole different stuff yet. And I would just say I do even though her parents were terrible, her love for them kind of like outshined even the love that they have for her.
Hmm.
And even though they were neglectful of her feelings, neglectful of her um of how she felt. They was neglectful of watching her because she ran off while they was eating, and like they like they didn't even care. So even though they were very neglectful of her, she still cared um and had concern for how like making sure that they were going to be okay. And so it talks about I can't remember his name, the water spirit, um how he
Was that
like
you talking about the dude who turned into a
yeah.
dragon? Haku
Yeah,
or
him.
I
Yeah,
think his name.
Haku. Yep. And so like he's like, "Oh, when you fell in the river, I saved you." Like, what? They never watched her. Like her parents is trash. They never watched her. And I'm like, so this water spirit has been like taking care of her and watching over her because her parents has been trash for a very long time. He was like, "Yeah, I remember I saved you." So like your parents has been my takeaway is her parents is trash, and I stand by that. But even with them being trash, like, but that also goes to show, like, what a love covers a multitude of sins. Like, even with how terrible they are, her love for them kind of like overshadowed and overlooked a lot of the shenanigans they had going on. What's gonna happen is somebody gonna wind up taking her from them because they is terrible parents.
Mm.
Um, and it's like they just trash. They just really just trash parents. But so that is like my biggest thing. And then that baby was bad. That's what I got to say too. That baby was terrible,
Talking about
and
Big
that
Baby.
baby yeah, he reminds me of the baby that like to come to my house. He's bad too.
Oh man.
Oh
Yo,
yeah,
so for me, I guess the one scene that was interesting that I guess I could draw so many spiritual parallels was when the stinky spirit showed up to the bathhouse
yeah.
and how it was more stinky than usual, right? And
Hmm.
how everyone had to get set and prepare, and they sent Chiro to, and it was her first time helping, someone get cleansed, So of course, there's so much spiritual implications, right? It's like
Right.
we're all dirty, we're all stinky spirits,
Mm,
right? And it's like
good point.
there's been so many people that have entered your life to help you get clean if you're a disciple today.
Hmm.
And when you really look back at your how I found Jesus story, there's many different people at different times in your life that help you in your cleaning process. Now, obviously, Jesus is the one that cleanses you,
Right.
but one waters, one plants, but God gives the increase,
Hmm.
right? So I thought of that like this whole group effort to help somebody get cleansed. And that's what the church is. The church is a body that helps people stop being stinky spirits. So
Yeah, that's a good point. Because when you look at the bathhouse, right, we're looking at it from the perspective you have people in different positions. You have the leaders of the bathhouse, you got the one, the servant, so forth and so on. And in the same ways, jumping off of your point, this idea that we are the hands and feet of Christ, washing people as they come in. We accept them, even if they stinky, right? Because everybody was tripping out when that dude came in. They were like, "Oh no!" But the leader
right,
said, "Okay, no, we got to do this. We got to represent well, and we have, and so." There are going to be individuals, let's just kind of just swing it around. There are going to be individuals who come to church who have a very dark past, have a very messed up
right.
background. And so we shouldn't be like the individuals say, no, turn them away. We don't even want to touch them. We should be running out, even if we got to hold our nose, like a lot of them cats did in the film. We got to go out there and we got to try our best to help them because we are representatives of Christ first. And, we have to learn to die to ourselves daily. And some of those dying to ourselves is those prejudices that we carry. And people have different kinds of prejudices. We've all been raised differently, and some of us the same. But I think that we do have biases and things like that. And Christ even talked about that, right? Because I believe it was in James where James is correcting the individuals in the church. He's like, listen, you're sitting the rich people up in the front, you're putting the poor people in the back. It shouldn't be that way. And he's correcting the church in the same way. Again, jumping off a great point that you made was this idea that these individuals are nasty when they come in, but we should bring them to the forefront and everybody work to help them and help them get to know Christ, get to know the Spirit of Christ, teach them the Bible, so forth and so on. So that was a very good point on your end, BK. So good job, Nate. I'm trying to think. What? Okay, I'll say this. What part of? Well, no, not that way. Okay, what character? I know we talked about No Face, but do you have somebody else who's a favorite character of yours in the film?
Oh, I mean, I think Chihiro is probably my favorite
Okay.
character just because of the effect that she was having. And you know what? Maybe just jumping on what you guys were just talking about, with the stink. Well, what they thought was the stink spirit, I guess, ended up being, what is it, the Great River Guardian or
Yeah,
something like
yeah. It's
that.
like the guardian of the
Um,
river or something like. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah. And so what's interesting is that this person or this being needs help because they are corrupted. It was affected by all this garbage and junk, right? And nobody wants to deal with this being. I mean, it's sort of like in the Bible when we see people avoiding the lepers, and they have to say unclean, unclean, so people can stay away from them. And nobody wants to make themselves unclean, or deal with burdening themselves with helping this person. And in the end, the whole bathhouse is doing it only because apart from Chihiro, they're doing it because they see that they have something to gain. At least I think Yubaba realizes who the being is, and maybe that she can gain something from helping this. So she's doing it because out of
Mm-hmm.
greed, and everyone else is doing it because they're following her orders. But to me, it seemed like Chihiro was just trying to help. She thought that he had a thorn in him, and she obviously thought he was he was wounded by something, and she wanted to take that hindrance out of him. I think just because she had a kind heart. um and so she's doing it out of, at least in my mind, she's doing it more out of just her own kindness to help somebody who is in need. And what ends up happening is that she gets that, I guess, that medicine from him. um and what's interesting from that is, uh she ends up, supposedly, I guess she could use that. We don't know for sure, but she thinks she can use that for her parents. But she ends up using that to help Haku. She uses this to help No Face. And it kind of makes me think about how we how we get gifts from God, and how we use it says something about us. It's like when we get the talents, what can we do with it to actually make a difference to other people? And she, even though you could understand, you could understandably see her wanting to save that for her parents. But when she sees that that there's a more immediate need for it, she's giving it to these other creatures. That, I mean, and like No Face, actually, there's really no reason for her to give it to him. um Haku, I can kind of understand because he was kind to her. But and it's funny because, like, he gives her she gives him she gives No Face the medicine. He ends up calling her a wench, partly because he's corrupted.
Right.
But even after all that, when he's purged everything and he's following, Lynn is kind of like, oh great, he's following us. But she's like, no, he can follow. And she lets him follow her onto the train despite everything he just
Mm-hmm.
did to her. Despite the fact that she sacrificed this medicine to help him, she still shows him love. And so it was just interesting to me to kind of see this self-sacrificial um uh character from Chihiro, and she's not. I don't think she's doing it because she's not thinking, "Oh, this is." I think she's just doing it because she knows it's right. It's instinctive to her. I think some of us do things that we know are right because we want to feel like we're moral, and we think it merits us something. I think I think for her, it almost seemed like she's. It's just it would be wrong not to do it. It would be wrong not to give the medicine uh, to Haku or to give the medicine to No Face,
Right.
even though she could use it to help her parents. And so it was just interesting for me to see, um, because of her character, in the end, she's able to escape that place. She's able to help her parents. Whereas, everyone they're acting out of greed. I think they got a bunch of money when they helped the river spirit, who they thought was the stink spirit. And they got a bunch of gold, but then of course No Face ends up causing all this damage anyway. So I think that sort of negated everything that they gained. And so they who are being driven by their greed ends up they think they're getting gains, but in the end they're not. Whereas Chihiro, who's acting out of love, actually getting ends up getting more gains, even though she sacrifices a lot. Um, just out of love, just out of wanting to help people. And so that was such an interesting aspect of it to me. It was just that she just kept doing all this, and everyone just loved her for it. Well, not everyone, but a lot of people were responding positively to her. Even Yubaba, who kind of despised her in the beginning, she never really loved her. But when she helped the water spirit, she did commend her, and she kind of saw her as an asset more for her greed, but she still gained favor, or Chihiro still gained favor with Yubaba after that experience, just because she was being who she was. And it kind of made me think of when like Joseph was in Potiphar's house,
Mm.
or when he was in or when he was in jail. And I think the guy who was leading, or the guy who was in charge of the jail, put Joseph in charge, right? And he was just finding favor with all these different people despite his circumstances, despite having sold in slavery and being away from his parents and things like that. He's still acting out of what he knows to be good, and all this comes from it. And to me, that's kind of like that was reflected in a lot of Chihiro's journey through through this whole movie, affecting No Face, affecting the great spirit, the great river spirit, affecting Haku, and even the baby, and I guess the crow being that looked kind of like Yubaba. I don't know what that the deal with that creature was, but you could see them affecting everyone. And even like when she's going to Zenipa's house, I thought this was interesting. That light, that lamp kind of comes up to them to kind of lead them to from the train
Mhm.
station to Zenipa's house. And I remember looking at that and just thinking, the scripture came to my mind. I'm paraphrasing it. It's also a song that many of us sang in church, but thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a
Mhm.
light unto my
Yep.
path. I think it's the way it
Yep.
goes. And so I was just like, oh, that's kind of interesting. That scene, the lamp itself was acting kind of like
I thought the exact same.
it,
I thought the exact same way at that scene that when you said that, I was like, that's exactly what I thought about.
yeah,
This lamp, the light of the Word of God, is helping them to leave and to escape and get them to on the right
yeah.
path. So that's interesting that you kind of thought the same line. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, and when you think about it, it's like I was thinking again. To me, I'm seeing Chihiro as sort of a um, an analog to what uh, what a born again Christian should be.
Right.
What a Christian is, because they are a new creation in Christ, even if they're not. Maybe they're young and immature, but there is this because of their being reborn. There is this part of them that is acting out of holiness and goodness. And when Chihiro is following that lamp, I mean, in a way, that's a good reflection of when Christians are following the light of the Word,
Right.
and No Face is following her. So she's able to, and when she's following, she's also leading No Face to Zeniba, where he finds a better life. And when I was rewatching it again today, I was like, oh, I didn't even. I mean, the whole lamp thing being the Word. I thought, okay, that's kind of an interesting parallel. But when I was watching it again today, I was like, not only she's actually helping somebody else when she's following the light, And I was like, that's a perfect parallel for when we look to the word to guide us and we guide other people, they benefit. And even if they're not acting out of goodness, even if they're lost and pitiful, kind of like No Face was, he was still blessed,
Yep.
even not realizing, why Chihiro maybe was why maybe he desired some kind of friendship or relationship with her. But I think because she had this kind of light that he was aware of, he was drawn to her. And I think, that's what the Christian should be too.
Yep.
Um and so just seeing everything that she did, not because she's trying to be self-righteous, just because she her own sense of decency, I guess. That's why she was my favorite character, because she's just, even though in the beginning you see her kind of being like this kid who's just like kind of almost like a teenager, and being bothered by having to leave her home and stuff like that. When she's put in this crisis, it's interesting just to see how kind she is, and the heart that she just have,
Right.
and how, even though she's scared and frightened, she's still acting out of love for other people. um and I was like, and it wasn't perfect, but it was still like she's doing it just because that's what's right. And it's like, okay, this is kind of like when we become Christians, when we become born again. It's almost like I felt like we're supposed to kind of like become like Chihiros, and become and act, according to that, and so that we affect other people positively that way. And that's what we see throughout the movie, is that she's affecting all these people positively. And that's why I was just like, when I was watching this to prepare for this, I was like, man, this is, I said it in our little chat, I was like, this movie was made for reals.
Yep.
Because it's just like I saw so many illustrations and parallels. And
No, it,
so yeah,
it's
yeah.
interesting you say that, because when we think about the film, is it like an epic, perfect film? Absolutely not. I don't think it's a perfect film. But what I think it does, and it does well, is open up discussions. I think that's where the film kind of shines, if it does shine. I know BK didn't like the film. It was he didn't like it, the anime, but there's no doubt that it opens up conversations to different things. And I think that maybe that was his goal. I don't know. To open up some conversations, to make some tie-ins. Michelle, you mentioned something earlier that I thought was very interesting, in that you were talking about No Face's issue with identity. And what I did like about that comparison is because when he does finally come into that home, and Yubaba's twin, I forget her name, Yubaba's twin,
Zaniba.
what's her name?
Zaniba.
Okay. So Zaniba invites him and gives him a place. And then you can tell in the character that he feels like now he belongs. And I want to know from you, as a Christian looking out into the world, what can we do as Christians when it comes to, number one, understanding our identity, but also making other people who are not Christians feel welcome and give them a place where they can belong?
So I'm going to quote Tiff's favorite thing, that we got to make people seen, known, heard, and loved.
Mm-hmm.
That she says that all the time, and I think that's how we do it. We just embrace people, make sure they know that they're loved, make sure that when they speak, they're heard. Because you don't want them to feel like, even amongst Christians, like nobody is listening to me. Like, keep people part of the conversation. Also, especially when we see people who feel like they're kind of on the outskirts, just start building relationships with them. And it doesn't have to be like, oh, now you're my best friend.
Mm-hmm.
It could be as simple as like, hey, how are you doing? How's your day going? And just kind of inviting them in and letting them know that they also are part of the community. It's not just, oh, it's just Alfredo and Nate and Jordan. Like, those are the people that matter. But I'm just, here. I don't really matter. I'm just kind of on the outskirts. No, you matter as well, which is why, like, the interaction on Reels, when you do the lives, if you're not subscribed to SOC's main page, you need to do it now. Has a lot of great information, but just being interactive with people like that way. And then in the local church, like, just building rapport with people and letting people know that they matter in the context of the body of Christ.
Man, that's really great wisdom, both from you and from Tiff. Uh, BK, you've done a few teachings, and correct me if I'm wrong, on this idea of othering. And I think you used a great analogy with the crayons. Do you think it applies here? And if so, would you mind kind of sharing it with the audience of what happens when people are othered?
Um, I mean, yeah, there's othering within othering, right? So we're in this other world with these other beings othering each other, right? So it's like the inception of othering. You know what I mean? So,
Gotcha.
but yeah, the basic premise is that what Satan does with this concept of white supremacy is basically it 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 persuades imagers of God to transfer that image to the image of a crayon,
Hmm.
right? In the sense that there's no one that's really the color black, right? There's nobody that's really the color white.
Hmm.
So what we do is we transfer our identities from being images of God to being crayon colors. So now, when you are a crayon color, you're a thing, right?
Hmm.
And it's easy to use things, right? So if I don't see you as an image of God, if I just see you as a color, as a crayon, it's easy for me now to hurt you or to marginalize or manipulate you. But at the same time, in order for me to feel good about it or to feel numb to doing that, I myself also have to see myself as a crayon color,
Mm,
right?
good
So
point.
I have to take away your true ID, but I also have to forfeit mine too in order for this to work. So you got all these crayons, right, in this box, and someone decided that the white crayon is the best one.
Hmm.
And of course, the other crayon is like, no, I'm the best one. No, I'm the best one. And you're fighting, but you're still in the same crayon box, and you're all crayons. You're no longer images of God.
Mm.
So that's how it works.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And if you guys haven't subscribed to the BK Apologist, make sure you guys go ahead and subscribe to him. Got a lot of really good teachings on there that you guys will definitely benefit from. There are a couple of aspects of the film that I did find haunting, if anything. And so now I would like to get into what the visuals, the animation, maybe some of the graphics and storyboarding that we could see in the film. Even though this film is not loved by everyone, it is loved by a lot of individuals who love animations. They put this amongst, their top 10, top five classic films. And I don't think it's only the storytelling, but also the visual imagery and how it moved animation forward. So I kind of want to go around real quick and just kind of get your guys' thoughts on the graphics, the art, and stuff like that. Did you like it? Did you not like it? Any standout images to you? Let's start with BK. Any thoughts on the imagery, the visuals, the animation style, and things like that?
All right, now I do have something positive to say about that, right? The thing about the animation, the expressions on the faces for certain emoting certain feelings,
Hmm.
I think was really really well done and probably advanced for its time. Like it's very expressive. So even now, like, I don't know how old this anime is. How old is this anime? When did it first come out?
It came out
I think it's
in
2001. Isn't it 2001?
was it 2000? I'll go with yeah, 2001, July 20th.
So even though we're far more advanced now, I was still able to pick up on, wow, the expressions on the faces were so detailed.
Hmm.
That's the first thing I actually saw after I got you know distracted by the parents. But but the expressions were really detailed and very rich. So I'll say that.
Awesome, awesome. Wait, real quick, just jumping on that. Lane Boo says the wrinkles on Grandma was amazing. Yeah, there was a lot of intricate details. I don't know. I could be wrong, but I don't know if it was. I don't know. Did I speak with you, Nate, about it? Maybe not. The idea of how the art was done, whether it was like flip page or anything like that. I don't know. If anybody knows about that style, you know how hard it is to draw an image and then just, draw another image just to change it by like a millimeter, and you keep on going until you get a full motion capture. I don't know if it went along these lines, but it is dope in the detail that they added to the film. One thing that I loved about the imagery, and then I'll kind of shoot over to Michelle. One thing I did love about the imagery was how different the characters were, and then not any of the characters really looked alike. You have No Face, you have Chihiro, you have the grandma with the ultra big head, you have the big baby, the rolling heads. I did like the diversity in the characters, and that they weren't afraid to really go to the weird, which is something I enjoyed about the film and the creativity that it took. The color palette, I'll say for me, the color palette of the film was absolutely stunning. So much color. But it was interesting because, most films, they have like this color theme. Like, for example, if you guys have ever seen The Joker, it has this darkish, bluish, and muted color theme throughout the film, though there are many colors in the film. I think this film kind of played a little bit with certain color extremes and muted colors, and I think they did an awesome job in kind of blending it well. So whoever the graphics design team did on that, it was absolutely amazing and stunning, especially the landscapes. That was beautiful. Whoever did that. So Michelle, anything about the graphics or the art or some of the animation that kind of stood out to you?
The detail of the faces of like all the people coming in the bathhouse, like the workers,
Mm-hmm.
um, like even the spikes on the coal when they are like coming to help.
Yeah, yeah,
I think
yeah, yeah. I know what you
uh,
said.
it, it was very well drawn. I really do like how like Alfredo said, like you can see the facial expressions matching kind of like the tone of what the scene was.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah. It was a lot of really cool stuff about this film. Nate, anything about the animation, graphics, or kind of like the storyboarding and environments that kind of stood out to you? Any scenes that really captured your understanding, well, caught your attention visually?
I think just the environments, just like when Chihiro was trying to navigate her way through, I don't know, is it the castle or the bathhouse, I guess. I thought that all those were really interesting. When she was running on the pipes or down the stairs, or trying to, especially when that scene when she was, I think, when she first saw Haku as the dragon,
Mm,
and then she realized she had to go run to Yubaba's office and help him. And then Zeniba was sort of following her through the paper bird or whatever.
right.
That whole scene of her trying to get to that, I was like, oh, this is really interesting. Just what they came up with, the kind of obstacle course, and it sort of made me think of that they could almost adapt this into a video game. At least aspects of it could
Yeah.
be made into a video game. Um, but all those designs, just the whole environment of this spirit world, the landscapes like you mentioned, all of that was, yeah, that I think that's what drew me in. And I just liked seeing the entire world. Of course, anime in general tends to be pretty good, character designs and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But yeah, definitely the environments that I think Chihiro had to get through, and then the way they showed the scope of it as well. Sometimes you don't get that, but um, just kind of seeing these kind of odd environments that make this world a little bit different. I thought that was interesting. It's kind of set the film apart.
Awesome, awesome, yeah. There are a lot of comments about this film, and we're gonna kind of walk through them real quick, so we can give some love to the chat. Lane Boo says the train water scene and the dragon scene was beautiful. Yeah, that was a
Mm.
very beautiful scene. What I did find interesting, even the attention to detail with Haku becoming the dragon and the paper, I guess, bugs or butterflies or whatever they were. Seeing him in the distance, I will say this: I was deceived And I did like the scene about when the dragon started coming closer and you realized, because at first when you first see Haku come out as a dragon and all this sparkling around him, I thought it was like the twinkling of the water, because I've seen that played out in other animes where a creature comes out the water and there's these glistening water droplets around that kind of give the effect of, wetness and so forth and so on. But as he became closer, it was like it went from this amazement to then he was literally running for his life. And it was just this interesting kind of dynamic on that, at least for me. So yeah, I definitely flow with that. Honey Bun, she says Joe Hihashi and Hayao Miyazaki, great duo, awesome. The Witch, my bad. Let me see. She said 2001. The animation style of Ghibli movies are great. They hold up literally decades later, and don't get me started on the music. You know what? I need to go back and listen to the film. The score, there's nothing about the score necessarily that stood out to me, which is sometimes a really good thing. You don't want the music to overshadow what's happening in the scene. You want it to kind of feed the film. And so I want to go back and listen to the music because I'm a big fan of film scores. I have my own collection. My favorite type of music are film scores. So that's my favorite genre. But I'm gonna watch it. The animation style to me was really cool. Now as far as it looking like what we do today, no. But and I think there's a charm to it that I wish that more people would adapt. Is this idea? The art kind of made me think about innocence, the way everything was drawn. There were no curvy creatures, there was no sexuality in the film, but yet the film had this peaceful innocence to it. And I think the art style reflected that. Let me see, Nate acting. We're at the part of Captain Picard finds Curry. Okay, all right. Let me see. Okay, Honey Bun. She says also the end when the parents were like a new school, a house, and house, pretty scary. And Chihiro was like, I think I can handle it. Love the growth and confidence she developed. She was a really cool character as far as it coming to development. She started off as the cranky kid who didn't get her way, and all of a sudden she's making sacrifices to save lives, and not just the lives that she cares about, but the other lives that people she just met. Like she just met Haku, she just met the other characters, and she's willing to sacrifice. So it's interesting. You know what I think this film does, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys. I think this film introduces a lot of really cool aspects and characters, but because we didn't get any background about the characters, and I'm talking about like for example No Face. We don't know where he came from. We don't know what he is. So there's no storytelling to kind of build us up to the character. And I think that's maybe where the film probably could have done better, at least for audiences who are not familiar with that culture and with maybe some of the historical references Miyazaki was making, as far as like, because I saw a couple of films, well, not films, a couple of videos on YouTube where they were referring to like the bathhouse and the art, the way it was actually copied from an actual bathhouse that was popular in Japan. And I'm like, man, that would have been pretty cool for the audience to know. So I understand when you're watching the film, you're like, okay, this is all great, but what does it mean to me? And I think this is more of a film that's kind of focused on what it meant to the director and that culture. And I think we missed a lot of it who were not part of that culture. Maybe it's kind of like, for example, it's kind of like when somebody doesn't watch any of the Marvel movies, but they go to Endgame. And all of us are like, oh, you saw that? Oh, and they're like, yeah, I don't get it. I think that's what it's kind of like. And I think if we were in the culture, we would understand the references. Um, at least from what I'm thinking. She also says, also, how did she know that the medicine would help? There was literally no explanation. She was just freestyling and hoping for the best. You're probably right. But the fact that she didn't know but took that step of faith is actually really cool about the character. And I think it kind of reflects us as Christians. And this is no shade on you, honey, but I'm not saying this is what you're saying, but I'm saying that we tend to be types of individuals who need to know everything before we take a step as Christians. And that, I think, that's our pride getting in the way, or God says to take that I'll give you an example. Um let me see who I want to use as an example. Ah, Jonah. Let's use Jonah. I think Jonah is a good example of the Lord telling him to go do something. He has this own idea in his head that, wait a minute, these are Gentiles. We don't want to go over there. I don't want to preach it because I know what's going to happen. But God's like, no, you're going to go and I'm going to take you through this journey and you're forced to go. And it almost feels like that she's kind of like a kind of Jonah, although she was much more empathetic. Once you get to the end of Jonah, you realize that he was upset that God forgave him. But at the same time, she has this growing. And I think once she realizes this kind of to me ties into how Jonah realizes the error of his way, although he had to learn the hard way. So, anyway, those are kind of things that kind of jump in my head based on your guys' comments. So, with that said, let's kind of wrap this up and give our final ratings. I know BK's giving it a 5 out of 5, no doubt. BK, what's your rating of the film, bro?
Oh man, I'm gonna have to get my Shawnee Mills on and be like 0 stars.
Ah, 0, not even 1 star.
All right, I'll give it 1 for the animation. That's it.
One for the. I'll take it, bro. I'll take it. Did you have any final thoughts you wanted to share about the film? Something maybe we didn't talk about?
I mean, no, I mean, it was insane. It was an insane film, and but again, right? It was a normal. It started off as a normal trip, and they fell into the supernatural realm, right? We think we live these normal lives, but there is this other realm that's occurring right alongside of it at all times.
Mm.
So that's it.
That's one thing I was looking forward because I saw once they entered the spiritual realm, I was like, okay, BK is gonna find all kinds of stuff, especially when it comes to the unseen realm. So I'm glad you mentioned it. I'm glad you mentioned it.
Mhm.
Michelle, how many stars and any final thoughts or maybe something we didn't touch on that you definitely wanted to talk about?
I'll say 3.5 stars.
That's pretty good.
Um, like I wanted it to be 5 stars, but it's just like it wasn't as bad as live action Dragon Ball Z and live action Avatar, but um like I just felt it was, I don't know, her parents just made me not like the movie.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Like I think outside of her parents, it probably would have been better, but her parents is trash.
Okay. And you said 3.5 stars, right?
Yep, 3.5 stars.
That's not a bad score. I expected lower, so that's pretty cool. Nate, your star score and maybe some things maybe we didn't touch on that you definitely wanted to talk about, or your final thoughts on it.
Okay. Well, first, I just want to say the last couple times Michelle spoke, I can't hear her, so I don't know why. So any expression that I had on my face is not reflective of anything she's saying. I don't know why I can't hear her, but so just so we know. But I would give this probably 4.5 stars out of 5.
Wow.
I think it's a good film. I actually was feeling bad thinking about it that I wasn't giving it 5 because it felt like it should be a 5, but I feel a little bit better now, kind of hearing that BK is giving it 1 star. So I don't feel as bad about not giving it 5. Somehow it doesn't quite feel like a 5 to me, just based on feeling. But I personally thought it was a really good film. And I feel like I want to dig deeper into it because I feel like there's so many different themes and ideas and parallels that we can use to, I think, help illustrate certain ideas within our faith. Especially, I didn't really touch on it, but the whole idea of identity, because I think that was interesting how um, Chihiro, for one, was kind of losing her identity when she was in that place, thinking that she was Sen, how Haku had lost his identity, and how that, I think, changed when Chihiro reminded him who he was. I thought that was a really interesting aspect of it, and how that you see it's almost like his identity was no longer um, being an apprentice of Yubaba and in that place. And so it sort of made me think about how, it seems like people who go into that place who forget who they are when they come from the outside. It's almost like, I think those who go into certain cults, especially the ones that we deal with in the UA,
Mm-hmm.
and because there's a huge thing about identity in that, and who your identity is, whether it's, oh, you're the true Israelites or whatever, and somehow your ethnic background somehow matters more than whether or not you're in Christ, and that your name is written in the book of life. And I thought that was sort of, there were some parallels that could be drawn from there that I'm still sort of trying to process in my mind. But I think that was an interesting aspect of it, where you sort of lose your identity in that place and you become a slave to that place and your Baba, and you're doing things just to survive for other people,
Mm-hmm.
for their pleasure. And then but once you know yourself, there's a certain freedom of that. Haku was able to break free of his slavery to that place when he knew who he was.
Right.
And I think there's probably some parallels that we can get from that, when a person finds their identity in Christ. But I'm still trying to think through those, how that could parallel. But I'm sure there's a, there could easily be a follow-up that we could that could be done to this. But yeah, I don't know. I saw a lot of parallels and depths and stuff, and so I was just like, oh, this is. I was excited to talk about this one because sometimes I don't have anything to think about some of the films, even though I like it. But this one, I was like, oh, there's a lot of stuff that we can draw from this,
Mm-hmm.
and hopefully, I'm hoping we'll be able to articulate maybe some of the kind of ideas within our faith, because that's a we like to nerd out about stuff, but we also like to um, show the truth of Christianity, and help people understand that. So I hope that we've been able to achieve that in some way. But and I hope people can look through, watch or rewatch Spirited Away,
Mm-hmm.
with maybe with different eyes, and use that to possibly contextualize the gospel with pop culture. But yeah, 4.5 stars.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, there are a lot of aspects to the film that I liked. It wasn't a perfect film, but here's the thing. I think if I watched it again, my score might go up. Not because it's such an epic film, but because it causes people to think a little deeper about what's happening in the world. And I think Miyazaki was going along those lines, talking about the wars, the impact of governments taking over and causing people to fall to greed, and kind of uh, breaking their moral compass in order to obtain whatever goods these militaries can bring. And I think there's so many aspects like that in the film that I liked. Um, we'll talk about that DFC. But my score, man, this one's a this I'm usually really quick on the draw when it comes to a score after I watch a movie. This one was difficult for me. I don't feel like it deserves a 2.9, but I also don't feel like it deserves a 3. It's kind of like I'll say this. I'll give it a 3.1 because of the aspect of what it causes as far as conversation. The animation was absolutely fantastic. I think the story could have been a little tighter as far as giving people backgrounds on these characters. I think would have done a lot. Um, I think as an anime, it does great as far as like bringing very what's what I'm looking for? Very imaginative character design. I think it did an excellent job in that. So I think I'll fall right in the middle. I think I'll hit right at a 3. Um, because fours and fives to me are like almost perfect films. And I don't think this is a perfect film, but I do think it's good. And I would watch it again, and I think that my score might go up. And if it does, maybe I'll mention it on the next review or anything like that. I think I want to give it one more try. BK, I know you want to watch it at least once more, right?
That's a negative.
No. Hey, but listen, that's part of the reviews, man. We don't always know what film we're walking into. Sometimes we like it, sometimes we don't, but that's cool because that gives us a little more to discuss. And BK, DFC doesn't seem to be happy with you. He said BK with the heretical rating.
Yeah, well, pray for me. Pray for me. That's all I can tell you.
That's the Christian version of I don't care.
Be blessed,
Yeah,
TFC.
yeah.
Right,
I was
right.
about to
Bless
say,
his
be
heart,
blessed.
right? The southern thing down here in Georgia. Bless your heart does not always mean something positive. Okay, so with that said, I want to thank you guys for coming in and enjoying our conversation on this film. The next film is 1995's Ghost in the Shell. Now, I think we're going to have great discussions. I think everybody, let me just real quick, have you guys seen the movie before we watch it again?
Yeah, but it was a
I haven't.
while ago. A
Yeah.
while ago.
Same thing with me. I know, Michelle, you've seen it, right?
Yeah, I seen it, but it's been a minute.
She probably fell asleep.
No,
Okay,
I
I
said
think
I
she's
seen
seen.
it. It's
She's a
been a
big
minute.
anime fan, so I'm pretty sure she's seen it. I watched it when I was younger, but it's along the lines of how it was with Akira. I didn't really grasp the film because I was younger. I was into more the effects and the graphics and the art, but I didn't really grasp the storyline. It wasn't until I'm 41 now, and I finally watched it with a grown mind, and I really enjoyed Akira. So I think it's going to be along the same lines with Ghost in the Shell. So I'm looking forward to discussing that. So with that said, God bless you guys. Thank you for being here, and we will see you on the next review. Peace.